Deepika Sandasani, your host, and you're watching Risk and Reality. On today's episode, we are joined by a powerhouse who's proven that risk isn't something to fear, but something you master. With over a decade of experience across various industries, she's somebody who's crafted her career, turning complex control environment into strategic advantage. As the Director of Risk Assurance at IQ EQ, she is strengthening global assurance framework and redefining what corporate governance really look like. A chartered accountant, company secretary, DISA, and a CISA qualified, clearly she's collecting those titles as we collect our passport stamps. Speaking of passport, outside the world of audit and risk, she is a poet, a French language enthusiast, a stand-up comedian, a traveler, and a coach in the making. She's smart, witty, and refreshingly human. Our conversation today is going to be on how audit and risk has shifted over the years, governance, leadership, and what brings heart to the world of risk. Thank you so much, Piyusha, for joining us on this episode of Risk and Reality.
Thank you so much, Deepika, for having me. Great to be here today.
I'm so glad to have you. Piyusha, I firstly want to applaud you for the authenticity that you kind of bring to the table. When I learned about you and I explored more about you, I learned that you are so much more than a risk assurance professional. You are a poet, you are a stand-up comedian, you've done it in the past. And our work and our world is actually demanding and consuming, right, in a lot of ways. It demands a lot of our time, and during this process, we kind of leave a part of us behind. I want to ask you, how do we kind of get that balance internally? And here I'm not talking about external work-life balance. I'm not talking about family, friends, but internally, how do we kind of not let our ambition overpower our creativity?
Thank you so much for the question, Deepika. It's a beautiful question. And while you were describing it, it kind of made me go back down the memory lane. So just to tell you a little bit about my own story, I have been passionate about writing since I was 7 or 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
I started composing poems, then I slowly started writing stories. And then when I ventured into the corporate world, I started writing on LinkedIn. I think that was a big shift which happened.
Yeah.
And then obviously all organizations have their internal magazines or blogs, right? So I started contributing that there as well. So I kind of integrated my passion into my work life, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you can't always have a separate time scheduled for your passions. You kind of need to integrate them.
Yeah.
So that is the way I'm trying to do it as of now. Another example would be Toastmasters. So if you're familiar with Toastmasters, I think that's a phenomenal platform.
Awesome,
for anyone who wants to improve their public speaking. I joined it for a different reason. I wanted to explore how people are kind of understanding or getting my creative writing. So I joined it like 6 years back, and again within an organization.
Yeah.
So I was the president of a club in an organization known as Symantec.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal again because I didn't have to allocate separate time for it. It was a monthly meeting within office hours. I could pursue my passion.
Yeah.
So I think the key here is to be a bit creative in this entire process,
Right.
and to see whether you can evolve your work life along with your job simultaneously. It does happen.
Yes.
You just need to be a little bit more creative, think out of the box.
Yeah.
I love traveling as well. I think most of us here
we
do. So just a tip is schedule your vacations way well in advance.
Right.
For first, I think it saves a lot of money. I mean, that is for all practical purposes.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that it gives you that feeling of happiness in anticipation.
Right.
And I read somewhere, and I can personally attest to that as well, is that when you're anticipating something, the dopamine spike is much higher than even when you're on that actual holiday. So I think
the wait for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea to do that. If you have a long commute and if you love reading, utilize that time. Because I have been commuting for about an hour and a half till about 5 years back.
Yeah.
And I just purchased a Kindle and I used to make maximum use of my time.
Yeah.
So all my hobbies, all my passions were kind of integrated in my work life as well.
Yeah.
And that makes me happy. I think that is the essence essentially of what we do.
Right.
Work makes me happy, of course. But when I pursue a hobby, if I write something, even for say 20 minutes in a week, it kind of fuels my work week. And that I think is the secret. I would say great secret, but just a little bit of creativity and being intentional about it. You have to make efforts to pursue your passion, but please do it. That I think
Yeah.
is just a call for everyone.
That is amazing. That is what I said when I said authentic. You really are unapologetically yourself.
Thank you.
I think I met you for the first time when you were a speaker in a panel for one of the conferences, and
Right.
you made a very simple choice of wearing sports shoes and entering the panel, and that kind of broke so many unspoken norms about what a professional should really look like. And I really loved the way that you commanded and mastered the room that day. So thank you for sharing those thoughts with us. Piyusha, you've also been part of many organizations. You've seen their control environments, and you've seen everything that goes beneath the surface, right? From that perspective, are organizations really going towards the path of transformation in a genuine and real way? Or are they really just just like digitizing all the outdated processes and calling this all a paradigm shift? What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, love the question, and it's a very bold question. Glad you decided to ask it. I think all of us have this question at some point in time.
Right.
And to maybe answer this question, I'll explain what I think transformation is.
Yeah.
So transformation essentially implies going back to the basics and asking the questions like, what risk is this control mitigating? Does this control even need to exist? I think just go back to the basics. Is the control working in sync with the business environment as of that date?
Yeah.
That is transformation. And if you talk about digitization, I think it simply means taking a process as is and then transforming it into a system. So
Okay.
if only digitization happens without transformation, I think that is a big problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I have to think of an example just to explain my point, right?
Yeah.
If, say, for example, there is a manual process wherein someone approves the purchase order, and typically we had that process wherein
Yeah.
the manager used to sign a form and then it was a long process.
Right.
Now, obviously, that process has gotten automated. The manager receives a notification, he
Yes.
clicks on it, it's done, great. But while that was happening, did anybody bother to check what was the approval limit and did it even make sense?
Yeah.
If he was approving, say, 100,000, even say 3 years back, and the business has grown, say, 5-fold since then that approval limit doesn't make sense because the risk is not getting mitigated here.
Yeah.
So that is what I mean by pure digitization without transformation. And that is a big risk which many organizations are falling trap into because again, I mean, automation is great. If you are automating something, it is always a good thing.
Yeah.
But then again, you are not doing the hard work. And the hard work, the uncomfortable questions lies in transformation. You need to ask these questions, make the changes, and then venture towards digitization. That is my thought.
That's a very good thought. I was reading an article recently and it said that organizations are focusing on automation and not augmentation.
Correct.
Like they're really focusing just on how can I get the job done by 2 people instead of 10.
Yeah.
But they're not focusing on how do I augment and make this a bigger opportunity for the organization. So I think I can completely and absolutely resonate with the answer that you've given for this. My follow-up question to this would be, since now everything is available at a click of a button, we have dashboards, we have analytics, we have everything available easy to the senior management, right? But is there a danger in a way that are we mistaking visibility for a control?
Yeah, we are. I think that will be my plain simple answer. Again, if I have to explain that in very, very simple terms, just the way I like to do things. So visibility means we can see something. That basically implies that, okay, it is there, I can see it. Control again goes a level deeper and answers the question, what can I do about it? And typically when you have a dashboard or you have something which is displayed at various meetings, which is a great thing, of course, the control aspect of that is typically missing.
Yeah.
Again, I would say a semi-real life example. Obviously, I won't be taking any names, but consider a typical three-way match control. I think all of us are familiar with it, wherein you match the purchase order, invoice, and the receipt.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that control is automated in many organizations, and few organizations have gone a step further and have added dashboards to it. So you can essentially see what is the match rate before the payment is processed. That's great. Looks great on paper.
Yeah.
But again, the question arises: what if the match fails? If the match fails, what is being done? Typically, again, based on my observation, it is being handled by a team which kind of looks after the exceptions queue. And the way they are overriding the exceptions is not properly scrutinized. So because they are in a hurry to actually make the dashboard look clean and green, they're just clicking through, and nobody is paying a lot of attention to that. So on the surface of it, if anyone from senior leadership sees it, they'll see that, okay, this is great, everything is working fine. But underneath that, there is a big control gap, which nobody is very well aware of. So that is what I mean. You're investing a lot in the visibility infrastructure, but not that amount of effort is being spent on the control part of things, which should be the other way around.
Correct.
You should, again, I think the first question which you asked, right, on transformation, you should always take a lot of efforts in transformation and then do whatever you want to do. Till you do complete step 1, step 2 can never be achieved. It's just, it's all fluff. Looks good on paper, and then when something blows up, you will be questioned like, okay, what went wrong?
And where was the audit?
Exactly.
Where was the audit team, and what were the audit team really doing at this point in time? That actually adds a lot of value, I think, for our viewers as well, to kind of not look at surface, go deeper, dig deeper, and understand what can go wrong and try to mitigate that as well.
Exactly.
In line with the transformation. Thank you so much, Piyusha, for those insights. I think that swiftly takes me to my next question, which was more or less in the similar lines. We always say that risk owners are business leaders, right? Everybody says that somebody who's close to the function, somebody who knows the business better, right? But I have often seen that risk assurance becomes a firefighter in a situation where something goes wrong. So do you think, would you call this a structural flaw, or would you call this a cultural issue which needs to be rather dealt at an enterprise level?
So if we have to talk about structure, I think the 3 lines of defense model is really very well defined. Wherein the first line, as you rightly said, owns the business, owns the controls, owns the risk. We just provide oversight, and internal audit, the third line, provides independent assurance. So that model is properly defined. But now the second question is whether it is being followed in practice that way, and more often than not, the answer is no. And that, again, as I said, is a cultural issue, because that is the way it's always being done in organizations. Nobody loves assurance and internal audit. Let's be very honest about it. I mean, not trying to mince words here. Nobody is our greatest fan. And I think it is the way things have been communicated, right?
Correct.
For the business, their first priority always remains of completing their deliverables on time, without taking into account the fact that, okay, there could be a risk in this process, I need to mitigate it. It will never be their priority, basically. And then when we perform a review, definitely all the time we are not performing it in real time. So there will be gaps, there will be issues which arise, and we will be always in the firefighting mode, which I think always happens, I think, for many organizations, not all. But for organizations which are in the startup state, I think, where people are still getting used to the idea of having a function come and audit them, I think it happens more often than not. Having said that, it's not all gloom and doom. There can definitely be something which can be done about it. At the structure level, I feel what we need to do, or what organizations need to do, is maybe have the goals for the first line integrate, having, say, for example, creating a sustainable, strong control environment. That should be linked to their goals per se, rather than something which is just told to them. Because when people are being held accountable, naturally they are held much more responsible. Like, I think that works. It works in that way. That is one part of it, on the structure part of things. On the culture, definitely a lot can be done, and we have a lot to do in that aspect, I feel, as risk assurance professionals. So sit with your business teams, have candid discussions with them. One important thing is talk to them in their own language. Like, when you are explaining something to them, don't use your risk and assurance audit jargons. They won't understand anything, and they won't obviously they'll zone out.
They won't relate to it.
They won't do anything.
Correct.
So take their own process. I mean, just a very simplistic way of doing it, right? Take a flow chart, explain to them, okay, this is your process, this is where I can see a risk, what are you doing about it? When you ask these questions, when you talk to them in their own language, naturally it will propel them to think a lot. That, okay, this is a problem, I need to address it now, because if I don't do it on time, things are just going to blow up.
Yeah.
So I think that is the way to convince people. Doesn't happen overnight. It definitely
It takes
takes a
time.
lot of time,
Yes.
but is very well worth the effort, I would say.
Yeah. But do you think that automation kind of plays a role in terms of diluting the accountability and responsibility aspect for business leaders? Do you see the business leaders are becoming more dependent on automation as a function than really going back and, like you said, referring to everything in depth?
Yeah, I think that could act as a camouflage basically for any control flaws. I mean, again,
Yeah.
being very candid, that is the
Yes.
worst case situation.
Right.
But if again they know their processes well, they know their controls, then automation can actually be a good tool. Because it's a good tool to showcase what they have done, the progress they have done. So it can work either ways, but as I always keep on saying, right, it is like a movie. You need to know the starting, the interval, and obviously the end as well.
Yeah.
If you only look at the first half, then it's not going to work. So if the business leaders know the entire picture end to end, then it can definitely work wonders. But just having half-baked information and then putting it into a shiny tool and showing it off to everybody, it's not going to work. That's my, and
That's
definitely I think it, as you, the question which you asked, right, it will kind of, they will shun off their responsibilities.
Right. Yeah. They'll do that. Do you think that as risk assurance, do all of us deserve a seat at the strategy table? And do you think is that functional, or is that role internally conflicted, or can we still be independent about it?
Yeah, again, a great question. And we have to venture in that direction.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at all the assurance functions, even globally, right? I don't think we are strategic advisors yet, because most of us are in that firefighting mode.
Yeah.
And for us to be strategic advisors, we need to be involved right from the beginning. Before, say for example, there is a process which is being implemented, the business leaders should come to us and tell us that, okay, this is a process I'm implementing, this is a risk I'm seeing, can you help me evaluate that? But
Right.
again, as you rightly mentioned, it is a slippery slope.
Yeah.
There is a very thin line, because definitely you run into the temptation of implementing controls for them.
Correct.
So I think just a rule of thumb is, make sure that you are here to evaluate, guide, but never design or implement. If you
Right.
feel that if you are getting into that zone, then just take a step back. So it's important to keep that in mind, and even educate your teams about it. Like just having this knowledge at, say, the senior management level is of
Yeah.
no use.
Right.
Even the person who is working on the ground should have this knowledge, because I think for assurance and internal audit professionals, right, credibility is most important.
Yeah.
If that gets hampered, it's of no use, because it's the foundation on which all of us are standing.
Correct.
One good, I would say, suggestion which I've seen some organizations implement is to have a separate advisory and audit function.
Right.
Within the assurance function. I think that,
Yeah.
that works well, because
Yes.
then they are very clear about which hat they are wearing. And if you're provided advisory suggestions on a project, then there's a cooling off period as well. Like you
Correct.
you can't audit that process.
Right.
So I think that is a good safeguard which you can apply. But no, the balance is not inherently conflicted. Having said that, repeating myself, it's a slippery slope.
Right.
So just be careful and make sure that there is essentially clarity of action and execution whenever you are venturing into such projects, because we have to go in that direction. We can't, as I said, always be reactive. We have to be more proactive. We have to get involved in strategic decisions well ahead since they are made.
Right. Well said, Piyusha. Thank you for bringing those thoughts to us. I have a very small segment. It's called Myth or Reality. So I'm going to read a sentence and you have to tell me if you think it's a myth or a
Sure.
reality. So the first sentence that I have for you is, strong culture makes tight controls unnecessary.
Definitely a myth, because culture is essential to create intent, but
Yeah.
we need strong controls for the actual execution. Both can't survive without each other. They are complementary and need to head in the same direction.
So the next question is, AI will replace a large part of assurance functions.
This is a tricky one. Definitely
Yeah.
a myth, but with some nuance. AI will transform the assurance function for sure. The manual activities which we currently do, like ticking, tying, anomaly detection, all of that will be outsourced to AI. But the finer aspects which require human judgment, strategic insights, that will always stay with us. So AI will basically do the checking, but we will do the thinking. And we
Yeah.
are good as long as we don't outsource our thinking to AI. I think that is one point which I definitely want to stress upon.
Well said. Most control failures are leadership failures.
Reality, can't emphasize it enough.
Yeah.
You can have the best structure in the world, but if your leadership doesn't support it, it's not going to work. You definitely need the support from the tone at the top. So 100% a reality. I need to
Awesome.
change it.
Yeah. Yes, we need to. I think leadership is something that drives the organization.
Exactly.
It brings in a good culture.
Correct, correct.
And then it tones down to the other folks as well across all levels. So thank you so much, Piyusha. This has been an extremely refreshing conversation. You are a reminder to all of us that really authenticity and excellence can coexist. That is one that I'm taking back from this episode. Two is that you also remind me that risk isn't something that you have to be afraid of or be scared of really, but it's something you need to be aware of. And I think the third one that I learned from you is your passion and your work needs to be integrated to kind of have an internal balance in your life. So this has been absolutely amazing. I am so delighted to have you. I've always adored you. From the very first day that I saw, I've always wanted this opportunity to have a conversation with you. So thank you for doing this with us and being on Risk and Reality.
Thank you so much, Deepika, for having me. It's always refreshing to have these conversations with you. And it just makes me realize how much I love what I do. And really thankful for the opportunity. And all the questions were amazing. I think they made me think a lot. And I'm sure the audience will enjoy those as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Piyusha. I'm glad that you loved it. And for our viewers, if you like these conversations and you resonate to this, I would share it with your colleagues and stay tuned for more such conversations. We have a lot coming up on Risk and Reality. Until then, stay curious, stay courageous, and like I always say, follow your passion.